So early. Yeah.
But, yeah, you can just two little things. Just make sure.
All right, we are live.
Okay. Because we take a comment.
Yeah. Are you privy to all the, probably not, all the acronyms and texting, NBD, no big deal.
Oh, no. No.
Do you know all those?
Not all of them, but I try to keep up.
It's because you're so young.
I only know TMI.
I have to Google it.
Well, that's, I mean, push comes to shove. And sometimes I have to reference for my kids, because some are not kid appropriate, you know, so.
Well, good morning and welcome to everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting here on Tuesday, April 26th at 8:30 a.m. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll try to keep everybody focused here instead of on the snowflakes that are outside. So, first of all, are there any adjustments to our agenda this morning?
Madam Chair, it kind of approved, it's on the agenda, but it's new to anybody who looked last week for the airport. I don't have a work order, master project contract yet, so scratch that. And the IFE agreement, we need to approve that, and that actually will lead to the airport work order.
Precisely. All right, thank you so much. So, any other adjustments or additions to the agenda? Seeing or hearing none, is there a motion to approve our agenda?
Madam Chair, I motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Commissioner Solison. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we have our public comment period, and at this time, members of the public are welcome to address the county board on any matter of concern. And when invited to speak, please make sure you come to the microphone and speak clearly, sign in and state your name and address, and the topic you're addressing. And members of the public can speak respectfully for up to 5 minutes. The public comment period is limited to a total of 30 minutes. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak this morning? Any members of the public? Do we have any written comments that have been sent in?
Madam Chair, I've not received any.
All right, well, we'll close the public comment period and move on to our consent agenda. So is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallison. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. With that, we'll move on to our next item, which is item 4. And this is a proclamation, and some of you might have had the opportunity to listen to Governor Walz's State of the State on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock. This was something that was mentioned briefly there. And so with that, I would like to talk a little bit about our resolution proclaiming today, April 26th, County Government Appreciation Day. So Governor Walz has proclaimed this day County Government Appreciation Day, and I'm requesting that the Cook County Board of Commissioners issue the attached proclamation, which I will read at this time. Whereas Minnesota's 87 counties employ over 36,000 people to provide essential services to create healthy, safe, and vibrant communities, and whereas the work of county employees is fundamental, whether it's a newborn well check by a public health nurse, a passport renewal at a license center, or voter registration and ballot processing. And whereas through their commitment to public service, county employees dedicate their time, skills, and expertise for the benefit of their neighbors and at times risk their personal safety, coordinating emergency management and managing justice and public safety systems. Whereas the vital work of counties promotes healthy communities, fosters conditions for economic growth, strengthens our infrastructure, and improves residents' quality of life now and therefore, be it resolved, the Cook County Board of Commissioners recognizes the commitment and dedication to public service excellence of county staff and officials and proclaim April 26 County Government Appreciation Day. With that, is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and we have support. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I would just like to offer my thanks to all of our staff, and I've said this at past meetings, in fact, fairly recently, but it warrants being said again. Really appreciate the work that all of our staff do every day in service of the residents of Cook County. And especially over the last 2 years, during the really adverse conditions of the pandemic, staff have really stepped up to continue providing services that county residents rely on. And just really grateful for their work. And I want to let folks know that Friday morning in this room, I'm going to be bringing donuts and coffee and juice. So I invite all county staff to come over and sit around for a while and just chat and enjoy some sweets. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Administrator Yorkie. We'll all look forward to that. So we have a motion and support. Any further discussion or comments? Not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, now we will talk a little bit about redistricting for our Cook County Commissioner districts and Auditor Powers.
Madam Chair, it's been noticed for 10 a.m., so.
Oh, that is
maybe we
correct.
should
Thank you
put it
so
on.
much. I put it in, I actually highlighted it, and I missed my highlight, so thank you. So we are going to pop over to the Highway Department. I see that Robbie Hass is here, and he's going to be presenting some information about a project award for calcium chloride.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so I don't know if I would say project so much, but we can call it a project. Maintaining dust throughout all of our county roads. Yeah, so we let out bids for this year's calcium chloride application. You can see that, you know, our budget was initially $230,000, and after receiving couple of bids, the low bid came in at $258,000. While this is over budget, you know, over what we had expected, you know, we had increased our estimate from the previous year to try and, you know, compensate for things such as inflation and general rising fuel costs. Well, we're definitely not in any sort of general times now, so we're not surprised that this came in higher. You know, after just everything that we've heard lately, you can see it trickling down, you know, into how we deal with things. So we kind of had two thoughts. One was either we start cutting out roads that wouldn't get an application. We could look at reduced rates on those roads, or we just go ahead and absorb the extra cost, which is ultimately what we decided on was that. The $230,000 was also similar to the levels of application that we did back in 2020. So in 2021, bids came in higher, so we cut roads, got lots of phone calls. I don't think the drought I don't think the drought helped any at all, but yeah, so this was to get us back. So I didn't want to do that again. I wanted to try and, you know, treat as much as we can. So I guess I would entertain awarding Envirotech the contract for this project, and I guess, does anybody have any questions, first and foremost?
Commissioner Mills?
Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you, Robbie. Don't have a question, just wanted to also point out it's not just about dust, it's also about holding the road together.
Very
so
true.
that really helps with our overall maintenance costs. And so it is an increase and above, but I think it's a good investment. Unless, of course, the commissioner knows of any roads in their districts that we can cut out, then I'm not aware of any in my district.
Well played.
Oh, God. All right. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Good morning, Robbie, and
Good
thank
morning.
you. I know in my district, there's a lot of roads where a lot of people live on.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a road or two where there's only like 2 people that live on the road. So I know in some counties, those 2 people would get like a little chloride, and then the rest of the roads wouldn't.
Yep.
So is that something in the counties?
Yeah, it's a difference of opinion and how you kind of treat that. Sometimes you can do that. You could spot treat in front of people's houses. You can spot treat where you're only doing projects, or if we know somebody's logging somewhere, we would just do that road. For us, we felt, actually to echo Commissioner Mills' point of, it does do the whole road justice. It's not just dust control. That's the noticeable thing. But as far as holding those fines together, the clay part, the dust part, it keeps that in the road, which helps bind the road together and help. So that's where we feel that even if it's only 2 people on the road or 30 people on the road, treating the entire stretch of road only just helps us in maintenance.
So the plan will be everybody gets.
Yeah, I know we don't do every single road.
No.
We do a lot of the roads in the county. I think a goal, could be to do them all. But obviously, it's very expensive.
Right.
So,
Okay, well, thank you.
yes.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to approve the project award for calcium chloride.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. Is there support?
Support?
Thank you. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you so much. And now we have a couple of items for land services. Good morning, Mr. Nelson, and good morning, Ms. Maxwell.
Morning.
All right, we
Okay.
will start with our conditional use permit.
Thanks, Madam Chair. The Planning Commission heard this public hearing for the conditional use permit for Jeff and Dana Bartheld on April 13th. The property owners are proposing to host 3 RV campers and 2 tent sites for short-term use for friends and family on their property at 3911 East Highway 61. This use does meet the definition for a campground per the Cook County zoning ordinance. And in this zoning district, that is not a conditional use. It's not listed as a specific conditional use. Therefore, we would determine that it's generally not an accepted use in that zoning district unless at the county's discretion that it's found that it wouldn't cause issues. Significant opposition feedback from the neighborhood was received during the public comment period. We received 17 comment letters before the public hearing, which totaled approximately 59 pages of public testimony. The Planning Commission's public hearing included 7 people providing comments in person, all of whom had already provided written testimony. And the Planning Commission determined that this use was incompatible with the neighborhood and voted unanimously to recommend denial of the request.
All right, thank you so much. So just for the general public, a reminder that our role as a county board is to serve as impartial decision makers. And our decisions are based on facts surrounding this particular case. And we have received a lengthy packet. I believe it was 85 pages altogether. I want to thank you for compiling all that information and making that available to us. Any questions or comments for Ms. Maxwell? Seeing or hearing none, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to uphold the denial of the conditional use permit for Jeff and Dana Bartheld.
All right, we have a motion to deny. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. That means the request is denied.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll move on to our second agenda item, and it looks like Mr. Nelson is going to take this one.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just real briefly, I want to say that going back to that last item, we will be having some further discussion with regards to what we call kind of the catch-all phrase. We put a phrase into our ordinance that allows for any particular use that's not identified as permitted or specifically conditional or whatever can, at the county's discretion, be processed as an interim or conditional use. And we had put that in there initially because, you know, we are an eclectic county. There are certain activities and things that may fit into the character of the locality, and because they weren't expressly listed on there, we weren't able to process those, and that catch-all kind of opens it up. But what we have now kind of come to find is that further and further, it's bringing in uses that are really borderline in terms of whether they're within the character of the locality or not. So I really do expect some further discussion over the course of this year in terms of, do we keep that phrase in there? And if we do we modify the parameters even more so, or define it a lot better? Because one thing that's very difficult to do in the 14 whatever zones that we have is have a specific listing for every single use that's either permitted or conditional. So we need to be able to have some type of flexibility. So just expect some further discussion as we move into the future with regards to that. Okay, speaking of a lot of further discussion going on into the future, this item is, as I had presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting last week, and we have talked about since even before 2015, but officially, as a county, we had initiated the Vacation Rental Ordinance Committee and had discussions through that. We adopted our program specifically for a period of 3 years, so that we would be able to get a handle on the number of operations out there, the type of operations, what kind of issues we need to look at, and whether we need to continue with the program. Certainly there's been a lot of public discourse, and there's been a kind of a movement in terms of the priority of issues from when we initially started talking about this. There was a lot of initial discussion with regards to potential conflicting uses between residential areas and individual type vacation rentals, and it now seems to be more in terms of the discussion with housing and the impact on long-term rentals and such. So we put that 3-year period in as a natural kind of mandated break for us to step back and take an overall comprehensive review of the entire licensing program. And we're in that year now, and this is the year to do it. So we do need to make decisions about how to move forward, kind of projecting that out in the early fall, August, no later than September, so that we can adjust ordinances or agreements that we have with vendors. And so, as I had discussed last week, kind of looking at establishing a steering committee just for the period of a month in order to really put a framework on the type of review that we're going to do, identify the public engagement. This is one of those issues that we will definitely need to have vigorous discussions with the public about. And we'd like this, like a steering committee, just to put a framework around it. And what I did is it went back to the composite of the not a steering committee, but a subcommittee that we had put together last time. The membership for that, and kind of use that as a base to go forward. And I'm looking at a steering committee that would include myself. Joseph Ruth has been the one in the department that has, the boots on the ground. He's the one that's kind of administering the program, going through all the licensing, the contacts with the Department of Health, and all the people that call in, processing all the licensing and such. So myself, Joseph Ruth, Bob Thompson is the county assessor. Certainly taxation, classification, all those things is a predominant concern about that. I had included Brady because there's a lot in terms of lodging taxes that's associated with that. And I added the county attorney just as a suggestion, if we can pull that in, because there are a lot of legal issues, certainly. And as we had discussed last week, other jurisdictions all up and down the shore. And not only is it a regional issue, but it is a statewide, nationwide, and even worldwide issue with regards to short-term rentals. So, and then one commissioner, and Ginny Storley from the West End District as being a higher concentration, felt it was a good suit for that, but we'd also like to include Robert Swallison on as an alternate for Ginny, because Commissioner Swallison has been serving on the Vacation Rental Appeals Panel, and we've been having a lot of these discussions on the front end to carry that discussion forward. So that's the membership that I'm proposing, that we go ahead and hit this steering committee and that we report back by the May 24th meeting for recommendations to move forward with the full review process.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I have. Thank you, Tim. I'm wondering why the steering committee to make recommendations, and why not go back to the original committee that came up and had the information for the last presentation? Why exclude some people?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hawkins, we expect that the full committee is going to represent, mirrors pretty much the original committee. There's a lot of turnover. People that were on it are in different roles, different things. The two commissioners that were involved in that whole process aren't on the board anymore. And so we felt just in terms of being able to establish a framework of what is to be reviewed, we had initially done that. When we did it to begin with, we did it just initially within the department. We didn't even have a steering committee. It was just myself and a couple folks. We got together and put together the framework of how to go about doing this. And so we just felt like a steering committee to put the parameters together, to put the framework together, to kind of set it, and then then recommend a full committee membership, which we've definitely have had calls of interest from several folks to be on the committee, some from that were on the original committee before. We don't know that, well, as a matter of fact, we know that there are some people that were on that original committee that no longer serve in their places that got them onto that committee. So we would have to do a reach out anyway to folks. And so it was just, this is a recommendation to have that steering committee instead of assembling a committee that we don't know that we can put together at this point.
And I guess my reason for asking is because I kind of knew this was in the works. I've had people reach out to me, and I say, well, you know what, there's going to be a committee and they're going to ask for input. And when I saw this, it was like, oh, wait a minute. We're going to establish a committee to limit discussion when I already know there's maybe people have issues out there that they would like to discuss. And that I just felt like most of the time we have like our joint powers or leadership group. We all meet, we discuss what do we want to focus on, and then we go into subgroups. And to me, it was like, well, we should pull back our vacation rental committee, decide with the group what are the issues, let's form subgroups. I don't know. So that was why it just confused me how people are going to give input to make sure some of the concerns are talked about.
Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner Hawkins. We fully expect that process that you're discussing to be implemented. There is no, this is not, this is actually a step, it's a little bit of government ease in terms of committing, establishing a committee to establish a committee. But what it is doing is putting a framework on it as we expect to get a full public engagement out of it, to develop, because when we had that committee process going last time, and as I indicated, in your packet, you do have the report from that original vacation rental committee. And if you go down that list of membership, there are many of those members that would still want to be on it, but there are members that aren't in that function. So we would have to scramble to put somebody together anyway. How do we develop who we would recommend to be on there? We want to have representation from the realtors, we want to have representation from the vacation rentals, we want to have representation from resorts, we want to have representation from community groups, so we want to just be able to establish that framework so that we ensure we do get that full openness and of dialogue and public engagement. This is not in any way to limit it, it's just to basically establish a framework so that we ensure we get everything. And that's why I'm saying in less than a month, come back, and then we kick off the full review. This is not the review, this is just establishing the framework for the review. During the review, we fully expect a very vigorous, open and public dialogue.
Thank you. And I appreciate your explanation, and obviously I'm not a fan of government process all the time, that we have to do this, then this, and this. And the fact that I know there's people out there that want to serve, and I'm looking for a way to tell them, yes, this is how you sign up to be on this committee, instead of this group saying, we'll talk about who we want on our committee. So there is the difference. I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong, but let's make the process open and apparent, and so that I can tell people, hey, this is how you sign up.
Mr. Nelson.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hawkins, no, I appreciate that. And what I would do in terms of kicking off this steering committee is to put that word out there right now for anybody and everybody that is interested in serving on a full committee to go ahead and contact us, contact me, and we will get that list together. We're going to start with the list of the committee that had been serving prior to this, and then kind of develop it from there. So absolutely, and this would be the point in time with which to get that word out for anybody and everybody who wishes to participate. Obviously, the full committee can only be so big anyway, so we do have to develop that means to be able to capture all of the public engagement, even if folks don't end up on that full committee.
And I appreciate you clarifying that. I know one thing is there's going to be a lot of public comment and a lot of input. I have no doubt that the steering committee will come with some recommendations, and then we will open it up to the broader public. I mean, that's going to be necessary. Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Nelson, for the explanation. And the way, I just want to applaud you because from my understanding of this request, you're actually taking an additional step that was maybe a little bit smaller step last go around, and trying to get a stronger framework because you are anticipating a lot of discussion. And so I think it's just really wise to kind of, get your ducks in a row and to really have a good process to get as much public input as possible. So I appreciate this intermediary, this in-between step. I think it's helpful, and we'll make for a better process because that's what we want.
Precisely. Other comments or questions?
I just one more. As far as this committee that you listed off, I would also suggest Brady's on there, but Kelly in the auditor's office, I think should be asked to maybe give some input as far as the financial end of collecting lodging taxes also, since Joe's going to be there on the licensing end. Let's make sure we have financial representation also. Just a suggestion.
Mr. Nelson.
And Madam Chair and Commissioner Hawkins, we have no problem with that. I just didn't want to usurp the department head. I wanted to identify the department head, and it would certainly be up to him to be able to offer up his staff as well.
Other questions or comments?
Which I will.
Good. We'll just get it listed there.
All right. So, any further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion to appoint a short-term rental steering committee for the purpose of developing a set of recommendations for the review process. Is there a second?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are just about at the 9 o'clock hour, so I'm going to recommend we take a short break, and then we return in a few minutes for our public hearing.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
That's at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
But I could.
Maybe I still am a little
That's all right.
mess up here. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking care of me. All right. We are going to move on to our auditor and talk a little bit about some airport activity.
Excuse me a minute. Brady, could you bring your microphone down?
Oh, sorry.
There. Thank you.
We like to see you.
Yeah.
And hear you.
Yeah, the first time these were here, I famously, at the time, wasn't looking, and I grabbed the light and started talking to it, and was correct.
Which is easy to do.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah, I know.
Every time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, the first item, of course, has been removed from the agenda. Expect that for the next meeting. The second one is what's called an independent fee agreement. And this is a proposal from another airport consultant, Carvaco PA. And what this is someone to analyze the fees that RSNH will propose to do this project. Most of and this is a master planning project. The master planning project is just engineering. So there isn't a construction component, and the estimate when we put together the grant letter was over $500,000. The FAA requires you do this fee analysis whenever it exceeds $100,000, so this is well over that. So we've done this many times, the runway extensions and others. So it's a normal procedure, but a required one. And there's only a few that can do this and that are willing to do it. So this is another company that does this type of work, so they can analyze and the FAA looks at their analysis too. They study the whole process. So this came in late in the agenda because this whole process has been a rush. And then there's been a lot of discussions between the FAA and RSNH over the whole scope of the project and the size. I don't know the final numbers at this point even, but we'll know it shortly. But it's going to be in that range. We saw the 500 to 600,000, I expect. But anyway, this is the fee to analyze that.
So I know there's been a lot of discussion amongst the Airport Commission. This is a long process. The FAA has a lot of hoops to jump through, but a lot of really important hoops to jump through. And I'm really glad that we got this and can include it today in our agenda. Are there any questions or comments about the IFE agreement? Commissioner Hoffman?
No, really, it's just, I'm just trying to figure out what really it is, and I just Googled it, and I'm like, really? So I get it, they're requiring it, it's another government. I'd like to read the language, and who put that one in there?
I don't have the background, but I'm surmising that before they did this, particularly probably smaller airports, they had engineers proposing numbers that were way out of line, and it happened many times. And the FAA said, we're gonna require an analysis before you get stuck with a high bill. But It probably doesn't seem useful now, because I think it probably prevents anybody from doing that on the front end, because they're going to have this analysis. And so then it just seems useless, but I think it still has a preventive purpose.
That's
Thank
good
you.
perspective.
All right.
Commissioner Mills?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Brady, for the explanation. It's really, we're protecting the taxpayers from any over expenditures.
And it'll be 90% covered by the FAA, maybe 95 if the state joins in. But
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Svallesen. Do we have support?
Support?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mills. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now, on to our revolving loan application. The committee met yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you,
And
Madam
we'll
Chair.
let you take it from there.
Yeah, so this again was, the meetings again happen so close to our date that it didn't get on the original agenda in its full form. I just had a placeholder, so if anybody was looking out there, we didn't have the information until the meeting you described yesterday. The subcommittee that looks at these first, they met on Sunday and went over it for about 3 hours with the applicant, and then made their recommendations to the full committee yesterday. And the recommendation is a $60,000 loan to North Shore Superior Fishery, LLC, for to purchase a building for their fish cleaning, and then, and also some retail sales. And, I mean, the motion would be subject to completion of bank financing for the project, completion of an option agreement on the property at no more than $229,000, personal guarantees by the owners, loan payments to be made automatically. We're trying to move into that sphere, and a second position on the property as collateral. So the proposal is to purchase Benny's Auto Collision. They're working now on the North House site at the bottom of Dockside, but there are a lot of plans for changes at North House, and so they're proactively looking to move their business before they have to move. So they're the only fishery on the North Shore, to my understanding. So some of it's, there's a historical aspect to this too, but it's keeping that alive. They're doing well at it. They're doing a good job. So I guess I should leave it to questions. The committee that was there, we had a quorum, voted unanimously to recommend approval of the loan with those contingencies I listed. I abstained since one of the involved owners works in the auditor's office, so I abstained from that vote. So just for appearance's sake. But.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. Any questions or comments? I know I'm excited to see this business continue, and I'm also pleased to see some interest in Benny's Collision, and that property has been sitting there for a while, and so I think this is something that could be a real win-win. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Auditor Powers, could you explain what a completion of an option agreement is?
That's, they can't purchase it. They don't have their bank financing in place. They don't have our financing in place. So we're always doing this. If that gets done, this is approved, and so forth. So this would be, sometimes a seller will sign an option agreement to give a party the first option to purchase the property so that someone else can't pull it out from under them while they're working on it and going through the process. This thing is going to have to go through some Department of Health because of the way it was used as an auto repair. So they're going to have to do some, work on the ground, what's there, et cetera. So it's going to take some time before the bank can approve it. In the meantime, they would like to have at least some security so that they can go forward, and that the bank feels, the work is worth going forward, et cetera. So,
Thank you.
that'll have to be negotiated, exactly, how the option agreement work. That'll be between the two private parties. But
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion regarding the revolving loan application.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you. Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. All right. Administrator Yorkie.
All right. Well, I have 3 action items for you this morning, which are all related. And I'm going to preface this by saying my allergies have returned. And I had never heard of snow mold before I got to northern Minnesota, but I guess it's a thing. So do my best to get through this without too much coughing. So here we are, April 26th, and we finally have a CCEA agreement to bring for your approval. As the cover sheet indicates, we did end up going to mediation with the Cook County Employees Association. There was disagreement about the terms of the contract, in particular the cost of living adjustments for 2022 in particular. There was concern about the level of inflation that we're currently experiencing, and folks in the union felt that a higher cost of living adjustment for the current year was in order. As you well know, the budget for 2022 was proposed in September of last year and finalized in December. So we didn't really have a lot of wiggle room. We had built in a contingency. The original proposal was 2.5% in the initial budget. And that was based on inflation forecasts that were available at the time that indicated that inflation over the next several years was going to be around 2.5%. By the end of the year, it became apparent that inflation was increasing at a rate that we hadn't seen for the last 4 decades, basically. And so that started creating a lot of angst, understandably, among members of CCEA. And that really ended up being the sticking point in our negotiations. And so ultimately, the county's negotiating team felt it couldn't go any higher on COLA for 2022. And so CCEA ended up filing for mediation. We did have that mediation session on April 7th. It was a really productive session, or I guess we wouldn't be here. So happy that we do have a contract to bring to you today. I'm just going to briefly review the major provisions of the contract. It is for a 3-year term beginning January 1st of this year and going through December 31st of 2024. Cost of living adjustments that we negotiated were 3% for the current year and 3.5% annually in 2023 and 2024. And then the other concession that we made in mediation was a $500 incentive bonus that will be paid to all full and part-time CCA members. And in fairness to all staff, we're going to be making that available to the other unions as well, and also our non-unionized staff. So that, and I'll talk more about that in the next couple of items. But that would be a $500 incentive bonus that would be paid out of the county's American Rescue Plan Act funding. It would not come from the county levy or from reserve funds. And that was really important because we did not want to set a precedent for using the reserve for that kind of purpose. The other thing that is part of the contract is the addition of Juneteenth as a paid holiday, something that we offered the 49ers and LALS. And that brings us into alignment with most Minnesota counties, which offer 11 paid holidays. So this was really a deficit that we had to address, and I'm happy that we're including this in our list of paid holidays. Another thing that the CCEA asked for was a commitment to close the courthouse and other county facilities to the public on Christmas Eve if the facilities would not otherwise be closed on that day. So in other words, say Christmas falls on a Tuesday, employees would typically get that Tuesday off, but our facilities would be open that Monday. And what this provision does is it basically commits us to closing the courthouse and other county offices on Christmas Eve. Staff will not get paid time off for that closure. They will either have to work or use paid time off, or some combination of the two equal to 8 hours. Let's see. Next provision is an increase from 40 to 80 in the number of paid time off hours that can be rolled over into deferred comp at the end of the year. We added, and that's something that also has no levy impact, we added a new category of unpaid leave of up to 8 weeks for employees that need to take a wellness leave. And then we also are giving CCEA members the opportunity to enroll in the Minnesota State Retirement System Post-Retirement Healthcare Savings Plan. And they would be able to roll over, when they leave the organization, they would be able to roll over any unpaid time off or some portion of unpaid time off into that plan. And then the last thing that the union wanted, which was easy for us to do because I don't anticipate our changing this policy anytime soon, excuse me, would be the incorporation by reference of the county's remote work policy, which will be in effect for the duration of the contract. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and I actually, there was an anomaly in the pay schedule for CCEA between grades 180 and 170, and I did append that to this agenda item. And basically, the anomaly resulted in grade 180 being paid less at steps 3 through 7 than 170, which intuitively does not make any sense. If you're at a higher grade level, there should be no point at which you're earning less than somebody who's at a lower grade level. And so we are correcting that error, and that will be retroactive to the first of this year. The other thing that bears mentioning in regard to our pay tables is we are starting a compensation and classification study, which I expect will certainly result in our establishing new pay tables. How that looks, what the extent of the changes will be, we don't yet know. But but I felt it was important when this was brought to my attention last year. I felt it was important to address it just as a matter of fairness to our staff. So there are 5, excuse me, there are 5 staff who are grade 180 who would be impacted by that. So that is the contract, and I would invite Commissioners Mills and Swallowson to add any comments, as they were the other members of the county's negotiating team, if there's anything you'd like to say about the negotiations and the mediation session.
All right, Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to thank all the collective bargaining units for their efforts and willingness to work with us, particularly in this unprecedented time of inflation. It's not easy for anybody, and certainly not them. And a couple other points that I think are worth mentioning is our intentions with the Labor Management Committee. That's something that we talked specifically with CCEA on in mediation, and also with the other groups during negotiations, just about our intentions, and really that's kind of a lickety-split thing. We gotta get that rolling and have that meeting, and so that's something we agreed to schedule that. I forget the date, if it was In May.
In May is
Yeah,
all it was.
in
So we
May.
need to find a time.
Yeah. So,
I'm
please.
sorry, I'm confused. Intentions, what do you mean by that? Intentions meeting?
Labor Management Committee?
Okay.
That's having kind of a revolving committee of the collective bargaining units with commissioners, or the management team, just to kind of better build relationships and communication lines and to raise issues. It's not a negotiating committee, but it's to bring up issues, to try to get ahead of things, to have a common a framework or ground to work from. And that's that training that we had with Ernie a while back. So there's that. Also, something that's requested and makes so much sense, especially how the timing played out in this round with negotiations, is to start negotiations pretty much at the beginning of the third year of the contract, so that we don't get in this terrible situation where our preliminary levy is set and then we're just stuck with whatever happens from the year on. I think it's just really important to be able to, in good faith, talk with both directions, to really work on things ahead of time, because I feel like that was the tough sticking part in what brought us to mediation, was just that difficult situation. And there was something else. Oh, I also just want to thank the CBUs for looking at the CPI. In previous discussions, it seems like that's a very difficult thing to look at. Sometimes it works in your favor, sometimes it does not. What I want to, again, encourage, and I say this at every opportunity I get, is that we should be looking at an average CPI, whether that's a 3-year, a 5-year, or a 10-year, something to help bring stability both to employees as well as predictability for employers. So, and you know, I beat this drum at every regional meeting, every state meeting, anything I can put that plug in, and so I'll do it again here. But I do want to thank the groups for looking at the CPI, because that is how you measure how you're keeping up with your wages and what the actual costs of living are. So I just appreciate having those data points in people's awareness, because that helps with conversation. So.
I appreciate that as well. It helps us with planning.
Right.
And that is so important. Planning not only for the contracts, but planning for our levies, planning for our taxpayers, so we are doing the right thing. Any other remarks you'd like to make, Commissioner Saul?
I also would like to thank the members of the negotiating committees from each of the various represented groups. You came forward, you made your request known, you stood by your values, and you had those hard conversations, which are not a comfortable thing to do. And it's not in the people's just makeup to come in and have those hard conversations with your bosses sometimes, right? So I applaud them, because they stood tall, they did what they needed to do, and when they felt that they weren't getting what they should be getting, they took advantage of going to the mediation. So those are important steps. Negotiations are there for a reason, and we entered into it in good faith. I hope they felt that way, even when we were in disagreement. Everything was civil. Everybody had good, points to make, and I think they were made. So I really applaud their efforts. I think they did a great job throughout this, and I think we landed in a good place, because in the end, I don't think either side felt they got what they wanted, but they got what they needed. And in negotiations, that's really my benchmark for you ended up in the right place. So thank you to them.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, again, thank you to them and to you folks that worked on it. Commissioner Mills and I spent a year, the 1 year that we had to work with them to help them understand that we're in a pandemic And so you've moved the goalposts even wider to have representation and to work on this starting January 1st of 2024. So I think that's great to have them continuing with you because things change so fast, as we have just found out.
Yeah.
You know, maybe by 24, we won't be in a recession, but right now, there's, you know, smatterings of what if. So hats off to you that you work so hard on it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hawkins?
I don't have. This job really has a huge learning curve. I'll just admit that right now. And I appreciate the work you did on this agreement. My take on it, though, is I'm going to approve this because it's what we need to get done. But there really wasn't input from this board. I appreciate the work you did. I think, yeah, I get why you did that, but there wasn't discussion along the way. And I think back on when we were discussing a case with our attorney, and we had frank discussions about where's our line. And we did that in closed session to give input. And here I am, I'm like, I don't know if I would have agreed to that, but I'm not going to vote against it right now, just heads up. But that's what I'm saying, next time, I am really glad you're gonna have this committee to get more input. But I think more information needs to be shared across the board and not put on the shoulders of just two commissioners. And I did try to reach out a couple times, but then we're worried about serial meetings, so I didn't dare do that. So there's my learning curve. If I was here again, I would suggest we maybe have more discussions of how to get input, because I did have people reach out to me and say, oh, I don't get that on my job, why do they get that? Well, you know, I can't respond.
Commissioner Solison?
And you're not supposed to. The law says you're not supposed to.
I'm not supposed
There's a
to?
negotiating committee that you assign, and they are allowed to negotiate in good faith for the folks in Cook County from the government perspective, just as the unions have theirs. If you'd like to be on that group, sign up. But by law,
Okay.
this is your opportunity to agree or disagree. But before that, you can't, as people reach out to you, they're also not in compliance with how things are supposed to be done in this. If they're represented folks, they have to go through their negotiating committee. They're the only ones that are allowed to speak for them on the negotiations, just as we're the only ones that are allowed to speak on these things. We can reach out, and we did, if we had questions on costs, if we had questions on other things. If we really had thought there was something that the rest of the board would really struggle with, we could have taken a time out and had a basic discussion, but others aren't really supposed to be involved at all in the negotiations. And it's done that way on purpose.
Well, and that's what confuses me. This is this learning curve because other counties do that. So I was trying to figure out, okay, this is the way it's been done in Cook County for a long time. I know that. Then I reach out to other counties. How's it working in your county? And it's not the same. So I'm like,
Actually,
okay,
there is leeway on who you put on your negotiating committee, and several counties choose not to have any commissioners on their negotiating committees. It's really up to the county who you decide to put on. But once you put them on, that's who's doing the negotiating for the county.
Other counties have closed sessions with their board to discuss that. So I'm just saying, I guess I kind of would have like a process of keeping up to date.
I hear you. I have an open mind to that, but I would also tell you the folks who are coming forward from your represented groups are always concerned with who are they actually negotiating with. Are they negotiating and trying to reach agreement with this group that's been put forward? Or are they also having to negotiate with people who aren't even at the table? And that starts to build an issue with trust. Just so you're aware of that. That's can be an issue. Because if the group keeps, having favorable discussions, goes off, has discussions, comes back and says, yeah, no, we're not going to do that, then that can be a problem. That's all I'm trying to relate to you. So it really is one of those that there's a lot of things that come into play in relationships and in how you're trying to reach a final agreement. I'm not trying to cut people out. I'm just trying to say it can be difficult working at the table when you're not really the ones making the deal. If you have to go back out to, and everybody's aware, they're aware that if they come to this board and we come to you with something that's really unreasonable, you have every ability to say, yeah, no, I don't think so. You need to go back and start over again. That could happen, and they're aware of that, just like we know when we bring it forward. They say we have a tentative agreement, we're going to take it forward. Their membership may say no. Right? So this is the opportunity, if the board believes that we haven't reached an appropriate agreement, you can certainly say no, and we'll go back to the table.
Commissioner Mills, you had a hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am no lawyer.
We have one.
We do have one, and I would be very curious about the legality of closed sessions in this regard. And before you answer, so think about it. That's my question. From my past experience, I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm gaining it. Our past experience with mediation, there were times when I felt so outraged that I said, well, let's bring this to an open meeting. Because my understanding was we could have an open meeting negotiations. Well, it is within every collective bargaining unit's right to immediately go.
In the public domain, that's correct.
Yeah, they can do, you can call for that, but they can immediately go to mediation if it's public.
And it will be closed again.
Yeah, and so then it's closed, not with the board, but, and that has its own legal framework. Also, my discussions with commissioners is, from the region, is that it's unheard of for commissioners to be at the negotiating table. There's one county where the CBUs insisted that a commissioner be there just to listen, because the CBU didn't trust that the hired negotiator was representing their request fairly to the commissioners. So the commissioner sits there, never says anything, just kind of watching, basically. That's expensive, because hiring a negotiator is not inexpensive. The feedback we've gotten from our CBUs is that they greatly appreciate how involved the commissioners are in this process and sitting at the table. It shows that we really do care about them, and we care about our community and being that involved. And so I like that, but I do also see challenges with not being a professional negotiator. Commissioner Swalson has a lot of experience in private industry negotiations, and there's skills there certainly that can translate. I don't have any. I don't even like dickering when it comes to purchasing something off of the sell and swap. So it's not really within my skill set, but I'm learning and trying to be as fair as I can. The other thing I was going to say is, and this is kind of tangential, but it demonstrates that we can learn things from other counties, but there's also times where I don't like how that's done. And an example is, there's another county whose Public Health and Human Services Board is their hospital. They have their own, and then that's a closed meeting. Their Public Health and Human Services meetings are closed meetings from a private organization, and they send a representative to the county board to make requests or give reports. And in my mind, I was just, how is that possibly legal to have a closed meeting like that? And then how does the population, how do the residents stand for that? Or just, you would think you would want that involvement. So there's other ways of doing things, and I question that legality too. There's other way of doing things, but I just, I'm a pretty big fan of Cook County and how things are done. And there's always room for improvement, but I really value what we've developed and what we got going for us. So, and it's good to think outside the box and look at other options, because that's how you find improvements. But I wouldn't recommend. Well, I guess we'll see what Attorney Hickens says about that whole closed session thing within negotiations. How does that work, or what are our rights as a board for closed sessions?
So there is an exception. You are enabled through Chapter 13D to have a closed session for the purpose of labor negotiations strategy. So there's a statutory authority to do that. It must be tape recorded. That recording must exist for 2 years, and it can be, the contents of that session can be challenged for, like, if you discussed anything outside of labor negotiation strategy. What I can't tell you is how having a closed session like that would interact with the agreements already in place with the bargaining unit. Commissioner Mills, you referenced this ability for the bargaining unit to then take back their negotiation or something like that. And the reason that we have a separate attorney for employment law, labor law, is because of the intricacies and specialization needed when the statutes interact with contracts, and also who has that special skill for labor negotiation. So I can advise you on open meeting law. I can tell you that there is this exception. I can't tell you how that might complicate your labor negotiations.
Thank you. So Madam Chair, if I may, so to Commissioner Hawkins' point, the other county, what they're doing, we can do that. But to Commissioner Swalson's point, it's already a pretty tricky
Dance.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very difficult dance.
And I don't
Yeah.
want to imply in
No,
any
no.
way you guys
No.
didn't do your
We're looking
best.
to
But I'm just trying
That's
to,
not
I'm just
it.
trying to explain to you that you're really sitting there in your first meetings trying to understand where the other parties are at, where their needs are, and how that balances with what you're thinking, and you evolve as you go through that. And we did have some folks tell us, they even asked the question at the beginning, are you the ones we're negotiating with? Or are you guys going to have the discussion here, and then you're just going to go off and have other meetings with other people? Because if you're going to do that, we got an issue with that. So I share that not to say you can't do it, because as Attorney Hickens is saying, the ability is there. Just be thoughtful before you make that decision, because you need to be open and honest with the parties you're interfacing with before you start, so that there's not, because if in the middle of it all of a sudden you decided to go have that meeting, you'd really have to explain why you're doing that, so that they didn't, because each side is always trying to read between the lines of what's going on here, and who's really making the decision. That's all.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Story.
Thank you. One of the things early on in working with the three different parties is trust. And the very thing that they would ask us is this strictly between you and us?
Yep.
Now, whether any of those would go out to do any talking about it would be up to them. But they had our trust. We would not talk to even anybody in our house about it.
Yep.
However, if we would come to the board for a closed session to have it tape recorded, that to me is another step, because that eventually becomes public. Is that correct?
It doesn't become public necessarily. It's retained for the purposes of potential litigation.
Okay. Okay, all right. So just remember, you build trust with each of the unions. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills?
One further thing I'll throw out, and I don't mean to complicate things,
But you'll say it anyway.
but I like to be as forthright as I can. Last round was exceptional with negotiating. We had an interim administrator, we were in a global pandemic, and we had two commissioners who had never been in negotiations before. And so we had our core group at the table, which included HR director, because the interim administrator was the supervisor of one of the collective bargaining units team. And so the HR director, that should not be a negotiating role. And so she really tried to not negotiate and just be kind of a reference, but it was just, there was a lot going on. And so we did have that core group, but then we would, and this is maybe part of why they're asking that question, Commissioner Swalson, we did, we had our core group, the three of us, and then we would bring it back to, I think, Auditor Powers and Interim Administrator Rogers, and then we'd have that discussion, and then we'd bring it back. And so there was kind of some of that, no, there was that going on last time, and so that might have been where the question came from. And I think this process, that was a good process. It was important to have that sounding board and that team, but I feel like this go-around was a much more concentrated, productive round, and hopefully we'll just build off of this in the future with more trust building, because...
And we were able to tell the folks that if we need additional information to make decisions, those will be made through, the requests will go through the departments here,
Yeah.
In this building, and so you'll be privy to every bit of it, because your members will be the ones collecting the data for us. So we're not trying to hide anything. We'll even let you know when we want to have some more information about costs, because as much as you can be open about that and what your intent is, it's always intent. That's what's always questioned. The questions become, why are they asking that question? You know what I mean? It's always that intent thing, because you're dealing with trust. And that's the tricky part of these. The rest of it is dollars and cents. Never easy, but you get there, right, in what you go through. Everything else is just how you build that, because we got to remember, when you're done, even though everybody didn't get what they wanted on either side, everybody has to work together, right? And so you just got to keep that in mind. Even if you're listening and you're going, what? It just take it in, keep moving, and work towards a resolution to get to the end.
Well, this has been a really valuable discussion, and I think helps to keep all of us informed as well as our public. And Administrator Yorkie.
Madam Chair, just a couple of small corrections to the version of the contract that was posted online. One, in the Appendix A, which lists all the positions in the CCEA, there was one position missing. That was support specialist in the auditor's office, and that's a grade 130. In Appendix B, there was a request. I viewed that appendix, which includes pay tables for all 3 years of the contract. I viewed that as a single document. CCEA requested that we put the longevity pay box on each of those pages, and that's something that's easy to do. It doesn't really change the pay scales at all, so we'll make that change as well.
All right. Well, Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister Yorkie, for those small corrections. It's very good having more eyes on this, and the groups are really good about that too. But I'd make a motion to approve this contract.
All right, we have a motion to approve the Cook County Employees Association 2022-2024 labor contract. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll make the second.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalison. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for the good discussion. So now we'll move on to our pandemic service bonus for county staff.
All right, and as mentioned in the earlier item, this is part of concession that was made in the mediation session on April 7th. All staff will be receiving, that's all CCEA, 49ers, LELS staff, and non-union staff will be receiving a pandemic service bonus of $500. One correction to the agenda item, the list that I originally received did not contain elected officials. And by that I mean the sheriff, the recorder, the auditor, and the county attorney. So those were added to the list. And then there was also one person who appeared on the list who was actually a temporary employee who should not be on it. So that takes the number of staff members eligible for the bonus to 117. And so the total cost of the bonus would be $58,500. And again, this is proposed to come out of the American Rescue Plan Act grant that we received from the federal government.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to
Commissioner
make a
Mills.
motion to approve the pandemic service bonus for county staff.
All right, thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I just want to, again, give my thanks to the county staff and what they've done in these last 2 years and what they continue to do. Very difficult. They're certainly feeling the stress, as is everyone. And I just want to give my appreciation, and this is a small token of that, but it comes through the Arpa budget or Arpa funds, and I feel like that is an appropriate use of that, and it shows that we value our staff.
And I certainly would support that. I believe it's a way we can recognize our county employees who have provided us with great service under the conditions we have experienced through COVID-19. Any further discussion?
Oh, yes. We talked a little bit about this earlier, and part of it, we were waiting on the state. There's so much talk about what the state is going to be doing. Got to the point where it's not fair to wait, and perhaps the state will come through with something, but I think it's on us to provide this for the support of our county staff.
Any further discussion or remarks? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then the next item is the revision of the ARPA budget. As you can see, a line item has been added for the pandemic service bonus, and as I just mentioned, we're adjusting that to $58,500, and that would come out of the water, wastewater infrastructure to support affordable housing line item. And so that item goes from $588,124 down to $586,624.
Any questions for Administrator Yorkie or comments regarding that? Commissioner Folleson?
Would make the motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve the revision of the American Rescue Plan Act budget. Is there support?
Support?
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, so have we come up with guidelines for the broadband access to lower income households yet? How that is going to work?
We have not, no. That conversation's still ongoing.
And is it going to be held by that committee that's made this recommendation, or how are we going to determine that?
By, I'm sorry, what committee?
Whatever committee that's making this recommend, who's going to be on the committee to decide who gets the $150,000 for broadband access?
That hasn't been determined. I would expect that Arrowhead Cooperative would lead that effort. If there's a desire among this board to have some additional input in that process, we can certainly talk about that.
Yeah, because I know that there's legislation at the Capitol to talk about broadband, so I'm wondering is this really the most appropriate use of this money? I don't know. I just want to make sure we have discussions and somebody doesn't say, oh, here's,
Sure.
definitely
Well,
not, yeah.
there's no question that if other funding came through for that purpose, for the broadband, we could probably make pretty good use of that for housing supportive infrastructure. So,
would agree.
And that's, in that situation, that's what I would recommend. There was pretty strong consensus when we convened a stakeholder group to talk about the best way to spend these dollars. There was a lot of support for using the bulk of the funding for housing related infrastructure. So, but the discussion with Arrowhead is still ongoing. And I'll keep you posted on where we are with that.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Updates.
Commissioners. And then just a few other items. As you're aware, we are starting the compensation and classification study, hoping to have our first meeting with the working group as early as next week. And as part of that, we would like this board to appoint one representative to be a participant in that working group.
I think that's an excellent idea. Are there commissioners that would be interested in serving on the compensation and classification group?
I would very much like to.
All right.
Um,
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Are there other commissioners?
I'd be a backup.
All right, so we have Commissioner Mills and then an alternate with Commissioner Hawkins. Does everyone agree to that?
Yes.
All right.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Do we
I'll
have a
second.
second? Thank you, Commissioner Svalson. We have a motion and support for Commissioner Mills, and then with Stacy Hawkins, Commissioner Hawkins being our alternate on that group. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And thanks for your willingness, both of you, to participate in that process. Really appreciate it. Excuse me. Next item is, we have been talking with the Airport Commission about a courtesy car for the airport. And they have requested that we designate one of our existing fleet vehicles, of which there are 17, for a courtesy car for the airport. And basically what this would be is a vehicle that would be at the airport. When pilots fly in, they would have access to check that car out and take it into town to get lunch or whatever. There would be a limit on the distance that car could be driven. And we would be proposing to designate, I want to be diplomatic about this, one of our less nice vehicles for this purpose. I'll just say that. So this wouldn't be the latest, greatest that we have in our fleet, but it would be something that would provide reliable transportation for pilots who need that for the short term when they're flying into the airport. The reason I'm bringing this up, Brady and I discussed the process for enabling this, and it's not clear to us whether that's something that I can just do administratively or whether it requires board action. So I just wanted to let you know that we're having that conversation, and we're gonna get additional information about what exactly is needed. If you all wanted to move to approve the designation of that vehicle, that would be great. But it's not clear that that's actually necessary.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister Yorkie. Do we have do we have a clear idea of the demand or the needs yet?
I can speak that most other key airports do provide a courtesy car, so it's unusual that we don't have one. And I like the thought that you said one of our less nice. I was going to suggest maybe a Fred Flintstone car. So
It's not quite that bad.
I appreciate you upgrading the opportunity for the airport. But we've had this discussion for well over a year at our airport commission meetings, and We know we can cover the insurance on it, and there would be a form that would be filled out for each pilot saying that they need to apply and complete this, understanding all the rules, the distances that they cannot go over when they are using a vehicle. And so it has been well-researched and thought about and discussed greatly.
So thank you, Madam Chair. And so, I think it's an important amenity. I just didn't, I guess I was really trying to get a grasp on quantitative demand. How frequently it'd be used, how many miles we'd expect, what the maintenance costs would be, and that sort of thing. And I am less comfortable with a non-all-wheel drive, maybe our lowest grade vehicle going out to do that. I would think we would want something quite reliable and but this gets into, again, the question of fleet services. And so that's why I just thought this would be part of that conversation. And I do think there's value going in that direction. Not opposed to this at all, just really trying to think through costs and strategy.
And I can tell you, Commissioner, the vehicle in question would be a 2008 Ford Escape.
Oh, okay. Oh. Well, color me satisfied.
All right. Commissioner Hawkins.
So how is this getting paid for, maintenance? Is it going through the airport budget? Is it going through our
This would be through the airport budget.
So, just trying to clear in my head how that works. Brady, can you explain?
Well, there's a 40s, low 40s maintenance grant at the airport, and then they have some fee revenues also. So they have revenue sources to cover maintenance operations. This would be another maintenance and operations item. Whether, it increases the budget, I don't know if there's something else that could be reduced. It may increase the budget slightly. There's an insurance cost. But given I would say the expected use isn't going to be great. It isn't.
It's not huge, and it's
because
greater in the summer,
yeah.
Than it would be in the winter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
my concerns.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be used to go primarily to town for food, lodging, if it's an overnight or something like that. But, so, I don't expect it to be large.
So the expense is coming out of the general fund, but
No,
it's
the
going to be
airport.
paid for.
No, the airport has its own fund. So it would come from the airport fund, which has a state grant for maintenance and operations. If it fits
And
within
then-
that grant,
Ooh, that's what I'm trying, us with the car. I'm just making sure it comes out of the right column.
yeah, it'll come out of the airport budget, for sure. And, and hopefully paid for by, at least
Okay.
partially by the state grant or the fees that they collect. And if not, if there's some, amount that's excess of that, you'll see that on the airport line item levy.
So would the will of the board be to approve this today, or would you like for more information and to come back in early May?
So move, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion to approve the courtesy car. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you so much, Commissioners. Commissioner Swallison. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Mills.
Commissioner Storley can go
All right.
first.
Well, one simple way is you put a notebook in the car, and mileage is here, they put in what they did for mileage and the date, and that way they can keep track. Is it worthwhile having it there? Is it only used like 3 times in the summer? That way they would kind of know. So it's not too complicated to keep track of it.
Exactly, and that little notebook system is what the school district uses. That's a pretty common practice. Absolutely. Commissioner Hawkins.
So this 2008 Ford Escape, we don't need it for anything else? It's just been sitting there, not getting used?
Well, I mean, the last couple of years, essentially. I mean, it's been used, and in fact, it's in the shop right now because it was too used, and it's having some transmission work done. But in terms of our overall fleet needs, I think moving forward, we can easily relinquish this vehicle and still meet our needs. Our staff are driving to meetings far less than they used to since the pandemic started. I expect that to continue because we do have a remote work policy. And so the demands for fleet vehicles are going to be less. I did just recently get from Brian Silence mileage accrual for last year, and I'm going through that. And we'll have additional information to share about what our utilization of the fleet looks like and what we might look at for future fleet planning. I think on the table is still the idea that we might go to a lease arrangement at some point. Might be more cost effective for the county, but I don't have enough information yet to make that determination.
Thank you. That happens to be one of the things I get lots of people saying, county has too many vehicles. So, and then to find out, yeah, well, maybe we 2008 vehicle, yeah, maybe we do.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
I'm glad the county's not the only one who has too many vehicles.
I should mention too, we have gotten a request to acquire a new vehicle, which I've put on ice until we have a clearer idea of what our needs actually are. So, but we do need to get that figured out soon because the Ford Escape, the 2008, is a great example of vehicles that have been in our fleet for a long time. They're still usable, they're still useful, they still do get driven to some extent, but perhaps not to the extent that it's worth keeping them around.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting that information and additional data on mileage. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. It is just about 10 o'clock. I'm going to recommend that now we take a quick break and return for our public hearing.
Madam Chair, I do have one more information
Yes.
item, but we can get to that later.
Yep.
Not at all.
I spent one day in Wilson and down there, and I loved it.
It rivals, California, it rivals, everybody told me it's really bad, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I think it has a hard air. I need to lift.
Okay, that's
That's
a,
my first experience with that.
well, it does, and in fact, I
I had somebody here for the redistricting, but they left.
Were they here for it?
I
Oh.
guess not.
I thought they were here for land services.
They stayed a long time.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Oh.
interesting.
So I thought, yeah.
No, that Jerry Jensen, I talked to her in the bathroom. She's just never been to one of these before. She
Oh.
thinks it's fun.
See?
I said, yes, it is. Come every week.
Yeah.
Martin's gonna be so happy.
Oh, for the courtesy card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of,
But you know, my son, who used to work up there,
Yeah.
would drive people down to rent a car from.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's
Steve
been an
Sports,
issue. There
yeah.
haven't been cars available,
Huh.
and it's been a real problem. And
Where would you rent them? Steve
Sports, yeah.
But now
Yeah.
he doesn't do that anymore?
they've had a lot of trouble in the last couple
You
of
got
years
UTVs,
having
right?
any vehicles available at all.
Huh.
So,
And then you gotta break somebody away from their work to
Right.
drive somebody down, and that's gotta be.
yeah. And it's just been really challenging when you look at, the amount of activity at the airport. Think about last summer with all of, not only the normal flights, but with all the firefighters that were in. It was really a challenge.
Yeah, I'd like to see updated information about how much the airport's
Yeah.
being used.
All of that.
Because I
The
don't think
master-
people know.
you know,
The master plan is going to bring forward.
I know, I can't wait to see
Just tons
it.
of information. It's really
I want to
exciting.
know how many G6s have been flown in.
It's a G6.
Private jet.
Why do you know about that?
Who do you know that has one?
Yeah, I was going to say. ooh,
Lots of people. Everybody who's anybody.
All your friends
Yeah,
have one.
yeah. Everyone who's anyone has one.
Oh, golly.
Actually, I think you can get, well, they have G7s, of course, but I think you can get a G5 for not a crazy amount anymore.
What's G stand for?
I don't know anything, honestly. I talk a lot.
But you know, CBU.
Yep, got that.
I figured out that's a collective bargaining.
Yep. And the LMC.
I didn't know what you were talking about at first.
I'm sorry.
LMC.
Well, if you didn't know, I should not use acronyms. That's
LMC.
bad.
It
No.
took me a minute, but I finally caught
they're-
on, but.
If they're used to a lot in your group, it makes a lot of sense, especially if you have to type it.
Yes, yes,
Right.
and if you reference it once at the beginning, and then that's maybe what I should do. I should be more intentional. I feel like I stumble over the words collective bargaining unit, so
Yeah, right.
Just like
Speaking-
that Monday night. That
So
was
the
so
airport
lonely.
contract with RS&H, they had, no, I can't remember, an acronym reference. I had to go back to the beginning, and it meant Cook County Airport, but it wasn't
Oh.
Yeah.
CCA. It
Yeah.
was-
CKC is.
What is,
It's
why?
KKK. It's, yeah.
Do you know why?
No.
CK Cook, I suppose, but CKC.
I read it later, I'm like, I
Well,
don't know what they're
Lucy-
talking about.
There's
Yeah.
also,
Is
there's
it
also a
code?
four-letter designation that is KCKC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just what they,
Yeah.
there's national, they don't all fit
Kinda like
the letters of
WTIP.
your city or town.
Pilot
or- I don't
language.
know what's involved in it, but.
That's pilot language.
yeah, I think everything west of the radio station code,
Oh.
everything west of the Mississippi is W, or no, east of the Mississippi is W, everything west is K.
WKRP in Cincinnati. That's
Yeah,
east.
that's
W,
There you
well,
go.
W, yep.
That's the only way I know.
And then, yeah, KAXE is in Grand Rapids.
Is this on the agenda?
We'll ask John Barton to come and provide that update for us. Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're here to talk about redistricting of our Cook County Commissioner districts. And we'll turn the conversation over to Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, we have to approve a redistricting plan by law, either 80 days of when the legislature's been redistricted, or 15 weeks before the state primary, and that's today. So, we've kind of done everything to lead up to this. We're required to notice this meeting and the intent to redistrict for 3 weeks in the local newspaper and on our website and other sites. So that's all happened, and I have not received any comments or questions regarding this. And leading up to this, of course, we approved our precincts before the deadline in March 22nd. And this is for approving the commissioner districts, putting those precincts together. And we looked at that proposed format that we had consensus on April 12th at that evening meeting. And so this would be the date to take any other comments, if there were any, or if anybody's reached out to you, or anything else that you have observed, and either amend it, correct it, and approve whatever decision you make. The map that we looked at last time is in the agenda. That will be, if you approve it the way it is, that'll be essentially it, but there'll be some other minor adjustments if you make suggested adjustments here, like some of the zero districts that look like they should fit somewhere else. We can make those changes. Kyle will make that in the GIS system. And then we'll publish the final one, and we'll print out a large one that we'll use for the next 10 years. If you'd like, I can summarize the changes again. Our districts, District 2 had to change enough to cause the reelection of District 2 Commissioner because the size was more than 10% under. And so we had options. We met, Dave and Stacy and I, and you subsequently looked at that, where we basically moved that District 2 north rather than spreading it out farther to the east. And you see that on the map with the hatch marks. The hatch marks on the map show it's in the color of what it used to be, and it's hatch marked to show a blue outline where it is in the proposed. So in District 2, you'll see the purple hatch marks around there, which was District 4, which is now proposed to be District 2. And then the same when you go far to the east. The other big sectional change was from District 1, which is now District 4. The hatch marks that are in orange. And a smaller one out west again for between District 3 and District 4. You can see the purple hatch marks down there on County Road 7, where that was moved into District 3 from District 4, making more sense and making the populations more even. And then we had asked one other small one. We asked the city to approve moving the line in the city right out here from this road over to here, which moved about 59 people, I believe, just to more equalize the populations again. I think those are the, oh, and there was a stretch of Ginny's District 5 that ran along the lake shore all the way to Cutface with 21 people in it. And the populations accommodated that, so then that is proposed to be moved to 7, which it's, again, the compact, contiguous, it'll help with that, rather than being a stretched out District 5. And then some other smaller, let's say, population changes way to the north between District 1 and District 4. You can see the hatch marks there again. with very little population, but again, to make it more compact and equal. So I think that outlines the major changes. Oh, plus this was precinct-wise, we made a change in adding a precinct to District 4. Instead of the 2 precincts of Maple Hill and Gunflint Trail, we added a third one in the proposal, Colville, because District 4 is moved to the east and encompassed Colville Town Hall and that whole area around County Road 14. And then this makes 3 almost equal size precincts within District 4, easier to manage for assigning judges and things like that. So those are the major changes there. It's the other thing you have to approve today is who's the lengths of the terms, because all of these changes, again, have forced District 4 to run, because anything above 5% change means everybody has to run. Stacy, there was no doubt about District 2, just to get it up to the minimum. District 4, because of all the moves in and out, District 4 also has to run now. So now the option is, how do we have to have staggered terms, but how you stagger them is up to you. What I put into the resolution was one option, which said share the pain. 2 and 4 have to run 2 years after they just got elected. Let them go 4 years, and then make 1, 3, and 5, which are running on schedule right now, make them run 2 years from now, share the pain, and then go to 4. The other option is that 2 and 4, you leave 1, 3, and 5 on the 4-year schedule, and so this year they run, and then they get a 4-year and a 4-year and 4-year, and no change. And 2 and 4, which had to run now again in the middle of have them run again in 2 years, and then go to 4, 4, 4. Those are I think the 2 obvious options. You could change it, but.
Absolutely.
But
Well, I
other
can say that
configurations.
I have not received any feedback. We have no members of the public here today. And since the map was published, I've had no concerns at all with the decisions regarding the precincts or the districts. Everybody has been supportive of it, no negative comments. How about for other commissioners related to just the maps? Okay. So I think then we have the question about, we know all of us will run next fall.
Madam Chair, as far as the maps are concerned, there were those small tweaks we had talked about at our public meeting, informational session, and they're not represented in this map. I believe we were all on the same page about
Correct.
making those adjustments. So
Correct.
Brady acknowledged that they weren't on the map.
Right.
But Kyle will make that final map. So that was the only map item I wanted to
Okay.
discuss. Thank you.
So that, I think, clarifies the map. I would recommend that because districts 1, 3, and 5 were going to run this time for 4 years anyway, we continue with that. And that Commissioner Hawkins and I run for a 2-year term. Rather than sharing the pain, concentrate it. If that's the way you describe it, I don't think it's painful. But I would also recommend that in light of Commissioner Swallowson ran to fill a term, would run this fall and then would need to run again. That's a lot of pain. And so my recommendation is we keep districts 1, 3, and 5 on their regular schedule, if you will. I think that's what the public anticipates. And that districts 2 and 4 go for a 2-year term this next election. Other thoughts or suggestions? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's how I was thinking about it. And then hearing Brady lay out the options got me thinking more, but that's what, and as you said, that's what the public, I think, was anticipating, so that makes sense to me. but I'm open.
Okay. Other comments? Other discussion? Commissioner Storley.
Well, instead of sharing the pain, let's share, this is history. We've never done this before because of the census. Correct, Brady?
Well, we did it in 2000, caused the same issue, so in 2002,
We're repeating history.
we're repeating,
Okay.
and the proposed that I put in, one of the options was what was done at that time, where they did share the pain, so to speak. But the law doesn't care. It just says the commissioners have to have staggered terms, and they've got to make that decision when they approve the redistricting. So either one works legally, and it's how the five of you feel about it. So,
So every 10 years, we share the pain?
we're not. We're not.
Or depending upon the census,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
key.
Yeah,
Precisely.
it's the census.
Yeah.
If it's helpful, I would volunteer to run every year.
Oh, no.
You're not putting that in terms of emotion, are you?
No,
Commissioner
I
Mills?
was just discussion.
You
If
must,
if that's helpful, I don't think it would be, but
you
that's
must,
how open I am.
you must forget about campaigning. Dave,
Sorry?
you must forget about all the campaigning that would be required.
That's my life. My life is a campaign.
This is going to be a big year for everybody. Sheriff, Brady, Molly. Wow. We'll have to rent the Performing Arts Center and have one big discussion.
Well, we've laid out the options, had some good discussion. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to adopt the redistricting county commissioner districts as discussed.
And is there support? Do you want to clarify with the details?
Well, no,
For the
I
public?
was looking, are we doing the votes, or the terms separately?
That's what it sounded like.
Okay.
You said
You can.
as
Okay.
maps as
Very good.
discussed.
I support then.
All right, so we have a motion and support for the districts. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now, for the plan for our 2- and 4-year terms, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to have the districts 1, 3, and 5 maintain their 4-year schedule and have districts 2 and 4 have that first 2-year schedule and then moving to 4.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I support.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. So we have a motion and support. Further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. If there's any other thoughts, I did appreciate Brady bringing options forward, and it got me thinking more about it. So I just didn't know if other people had further thoughts.
You're looking at me? No. I also was thinking the same thing as you. It would go that way. Brady explained his rationale, and I thought, well, that does make sense. I'm okay with that. Now here we're back to
Right,
what I thought. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's where I was at too. I was like, oh, okay.
All right, all right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have an election, and we have 5 candidates, at least.
You do have to file. Coming up in May.
Don't forget.
Yeah.
What's the date on the filing?
I think, I
May
don't have a calendar, 17th, I think, and for 2 weeks.
17th of May?
Yeah, so through the 31st. But, I mean,
Is it still $50?
it hasn't, I'm sure that has not changed.
I don't know, there's a lot of
there's
inflation going on.
But there are a lot of election laws undetermined at this time. And Yeah, some substantial proposed changes.
Ranked choice voting?
At least, not that one, not that one. But, yeah, we didn't even discuss at the conference last week because they're so wide-ranging, and there's no point in filling our heads with things that may not happen. So we'll just wait and see what they approve. But they're very vastly different bills out there. So, both ends of the political spectrums.
All right, well, we'll stay tuned for
Yeah.
what happens. All right, we're going to return now to our administrator updates. Administrator Berkey, I believe you have one more.
I do. So I just wanted to make you all aware, I've received a request from the Recorder's Office to increase the hours of the Chief Deputy Recorder by 5 hours a week. Currently, that position works 35 hours a week. And this would raise it to 40 hours a week, which is completely full-time. So the reason for the request, I was able to get from Dusty the number of documents that they process each year. And as you're, I'm sure, aware, the last couple of years, we've had a lot of real estate transactions going on. And their workload has gone up significantly. So from 2011 through about 2019, they would process anywhere from 2,000 to about 2,400 documents at the high end. In 2020, that number went up to 2,668. And then last year, they set a record by processing 3,203 documents. The thing that is making this an issue right now is that until recently, they had the assistance of an as-needed staff member who was a former Recorder's Office employee, Joyce Juilliard. And Joyce has retired, and so that assistance is no longer available. Now, the budget impact, it's actually budget neutral because we do have the funds already budgeted that would cover the additional hours for the Chief Deputy Recorder. However, I want to mention for the sake of transparency that those dollars generally have not been expended previously. So we're not increasing the budget, but it does increase the hours for the Chief Deputy. And again, gives them the additional capacity they need to handle the increased workload. So no action is needed on this, but I just wanted you all to be aware that that change is being made.
Well, thank you much for informing us, and I think we all know that there's been a significant increase in the amount of paperwork to be processed, and it's certainly understandable. All right. Thank you so much.
I guess one other thing I'll add, I do have a follow-up meeting scheduled with one of the firms that is emerging as probably the firm we're going to contract with to do the capital improvement plan update. I've got that meeting scheduled for tomorrow afternoon and hope to come forward at the next board meeting with a proposal to contract with that company to assist us in that update.
Good news.
Yep.
All right, thank you. All right, employee concerns or commissioner concerns? Any commissioners have reports that they'd like to provide or any updates? Commissioner Mills.
I stumbled into the RCCIP core team goal setting meeting, and that is related to childcare, basically. I had to apologize. It was a Zoom meeting, and I had to apologize. Where am I? Who are you? And that sort of thing. And I knew everybody there, just wasn't sure exactly which meeting the term was. I just hope that, I mean, we all recognize the needs of housing in our community. We all recognize, I think, the needs of childcare in our community. Those are economic issues. Those are quality of life issues. Those are just community vitality issues. And we've made great strides and great progress with housing, and I would like to continue that progress with childcare. And there are a number of different avenues, but one that really stands out to me is just the economic burden, both on families who are trying to get childcare as well as providers who are giving the childcare. And I mentioned this, I believe, at the Public Health and Human Services meeting, just talking about the subsidy aspect of it. And I would like, as we put together this year's budget, to consider budgeting for something similar to the public health grants that we give out, but for childcare providers, as kind of an incentive, a way to make this more cost effective. I think it's going to be the simplest, most straightforward thing we can do as a board, but we just need to put that in the budget and see where things land. If and I'm afraid I can't provide a number for that, because that's so important to see what would that actually cost, what would be helpful, what would make a difference. And so that's something I put on that team, is to, if you can provide some kind of base or framework for what would make a difference, it would be really helpful. And they were excited by that. Hopefully I'm not giving false hope. Hopefully it'll be something that we can work with or work towards. But I do want to put just an earmark there. And if we need to cut that out when it comes down to either preliminary or final levy, then so be it. But if we start with what we need, I think it would make just a really, really good show of effort, at the very least, that we're giving this issue the attention that it deserves. So it was a good meeting and a productive one. And it's funny because, like I said, it seems like the easiest, simplest, most straightforward approach, but that's not what this group is about. This group is about a very broad array of options and strategies. And so that was really exciting and encouraging to see too. And it goes from trainings and support services and facilities. And I mean, we were in the other meetings, so you guys know, but it was just encouraging to see the different avenues that they're approaching to this issue, because it's not a simple issue, but I'm looking for simple solutions. So.
All right, well, thank you. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Last week at the Arrowhead Regional Development Committee meeting, they have folks who apply for the Revolving Loan Fund, and 3 of Cook County businesses received money from that, which was the American Fund, Rescue Fund money. And of those 3, I would like to, when you have your budget meeting, do you have a time set or a date set on budget meeting yet?
To
Begin looking as a group, looking at the budget and talking about
the
preliminaries.
ARPA budget?
Mhm.
Well, I'm not sure.
Is it
I'm
June?
not sure what you're referring to, because, I mean, the budget has been approved by this board. And so the individual components of it are on different tracks, like public health, for example.
Right.
They're already, I mean, the decision about how to expend those dollars has been made. I think what you may be referring to is what Commissioner Hawkins asked about earlier, something like the broadband component of that grant. That's still a work in progress. And so there may be a group that convenes to talk about that specific element of spending those funds, but there isn't actually like an ongoing group that is going to talk about how to spend those dollars, because that decision's been made.
I guess I'm used to a budget committee, the administrator, Brady, 5 people from the county. That no longer exists.
That's correct. I mean,
We
No,
have
no.
our budget advisory
well,
committee.
Budget
Yeah.
advisory.
The advisory.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but that committee, okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't tracking what you were asking. That committee doesn't actually oversee the expenditure of this grant. It oversees the expenditure of ongoing levy funding.
A levy funds.
Right, of everything.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, back to my point.
Sorry
When you
if I
do meet with the
misunderstood.
advisory, would you let me know? Because I
Yeah,
have some
well, that
comments.
committee's actually meeting this afternoon,
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
okay.
3 o'clock.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I won't come.
I'm
but-
sorry, I misunderstood. the question.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, I do have some comments,
Okay,
some input
Okay.
from going to ARDC.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Other updates?
Madam Chair, the only thing is, on our meetings to note, if we could have June 2nd inserted here, because that's our District 1 meeting, and that's going to be in Duluth. June 2nd, that's a Thursday, and it's coming up fast.
Yes, it
I don't know
is.
if we received any information about who's going to go or anything like that. I hope we do. We kind of got messed up last time about going
Yeah.
to the conference, so,
Precisely.
yeah,
Keep the snow tires on the car.
at least till June.
Absolutely. One thing I would like to bring up, since you were touching on meetings, because we are returning to more in-person meetings, but also, continuing our Zoom meetings, we have a number of intergovernmental meetings that occur. And I just want to make sure that this group comes to an agreement or is clear on, since we can only have 2 commissioners at a meeting, how we want to approach that. Do we want to have chair and vice chair attend any intergovernmental meetings, or would we prefer to, each time a meeting is proposed, have people volunteer to go to that meeting? How would you like to approach that? Commissioner Hawkins?
So, and I was rather confused. I'm assuming you're talking about the meeting that we held with the Forest Service.
And DNR.
And there were other commissioners from other counties there. Did they public notice those meetings? Because they did have more than one commissioner there. No, this was an informational.
You can have 2.
You can have 2, but I
But
took it
there
as you,
were
it was
some
information.
They have more than 2?
Yes, they did.
Well, St. Louis can have 3.
Oh, so they have
Because there's
separate rules.
seven.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where I just noticed.
But I just think it would be valuable for us to determine, do we want the chair and vice chair to go to those as part of their responsibilities, or would you prefer to decide, based on each particular meeting and the topics, to have a discussion and then send people? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had actually, we had decided that at the beginning of the year. And I can't remember for sure who, I thought it was Commissioner Storley, and anyways, I lost it. But we had decided that. I do hear the question about chair, vice chair. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think that's absolute, I mean, I don't know that that's absolutely necessary. I like just having people selected for their experiences or whatever, but I don't think we should do it on,
Well, should we do this,
Each
say it's
time.
chair and vice chair, and if someone would like to attend, to contact either Commissioner Svallesen or contact myself, and they could go in our spots. I just want to make sure we have all our meetings covered, but we don't have too many people there.
Is there a set time as to how often they meet?
It was very, at the meeting, up in the air. Well, we used to meet quarterly, we might meet twice a year. It was not clear.
Okay. So the next
But I
one-
think we should be clear
We
as a
should
group
be.
on who's going to attend, so that we aren't scrambling at the last minute.
And
Commissioner Hawkins.
here's another learning curve thing. When I got the meeting invitation, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I assumed it was for all of us. And when I attended the meeting, then I'm like, well, how does the public know about this? Where does the public get
And
to
it was not
hear
noticed.
this information?
There was no
So
public
that's
notice
what-
by the DNR and Forest Service.
So when, there's my question that I did not raise during the meeting, because I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
And
But
that-
how does the public get to know what the Forest Service is telling us?
Yeah, and I think one reason, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Mills had his hand up.
Commissioner Mills.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just looked it up, and Commissioner Sullivan is our primary, and Commissioner Storley is the alternate for it was termed the quarterly, and that hadn't happened all through the pandemic,
Right.
to my knowledge. And what I was curious about was, had we posted this? And And then I looked through the list, and Administrator Yorkie was not
Not
on the list. And I was like, I bet you anything we did not post it if our administrator is not aware of this meeting. And so then I was like, oh boy. So that's, I think, what the real crux of the issue was just not including our administrator in the invite.
I don't think other administrators were included either. I don't think Matt Huddleston.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So
Which
I
is-
think they just forgot that step.
And it's funny because
They haven't done it in so long, they forgot.
The Forest Service and the DNR aren't in the open meeting world as much. And so this was kind of an administrative meeting. And very important information. I was sorry to have missed it, and also relieved to miss it to drop out of the meeting too.
I can
But
read my notes.
oh, thank you. I think it's very important to have these relationships between the different agencies. And much like other inter-county meetings, like personnel committee, or even coming to negotiations, there's just a different dynamic there versus like a public meeting. And I think the other agencies are using this as almost like a sounding board to try to keep everyone in the loop and that sort of thing, as far as agencies are concerned. And then they do have their own public releases and public information sessions and that sort of thing. So, yes, that information needs to get out to the public, and there was topics on there that I know the public is very interested in, and I'm sure they will communicate that. But I just saw this as one of those administrative things. So, that being said, I don't have an issue changing our makeup. If we want to have 2 commissioners there, or if we want to stick with 1 commissioner and an alternate, or if we, whatever, I'm open to that.
I enjoy coming, and, I'm supposed to be there, and I was there, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we don't have too many.
Yeah, and as far as the informational side of things, like, I get what you're saying. Like, on their agenda, they were looking for county updates as well. I don't know how the agenda played out, but they were looking for that back and forth according to the agenda, and so there is risk there, and it's just really important that we do not put ourselves in a position of risk. We are personally liable for violating open meeting law, and so we just need to be very careful, very clear, very transparent, and just adhere to that, err on the side of caution. And so that's why I let the organizers know, I let Administrator Yorkie know, and then I had interest, and so I bopped in. And then once I saw there was a quorum, I was like, yep, okay, I was gonna maybe even bring that up in the meeting, and then I thought, I'll leave that to James, and then he sent out the email, so.
Yeah.
And
I
it's,
didn't read soon enough,
Oh,
sorry. Sorry.
Well, there were just 2 of us that stayed for the meeting.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
so, yeah, and I mean, ideally, for that kind of information sharing meeting, I think it'd be great if all 5 of you could
Yeah.
participate, but when it's somebody else's meeting and
Yeah.
maybe they don't want to have, 500 members of the public tuning in on Zoom, it's a little harder to say,
Yeah, I think we should
Notice
just
it.
limit it so that
Yeah.
we don't run into that issue.
Hopefully, we'll get heads up a little bit further notice next time, and we'll be able to respond. If one of us can't go, then we'd, pass it on.
Yeah, and I apologize for not looking at that list earlier. Because I had it on my calendar for I don't know how long,
It's been on there
it's
for a
just,
long
I
time.
never
Yeah.
dug into it until
Right.
too late.
it worked out.
It did.
Good.
And I will be there, I promise. I will attend. If not, I will make sure that Commissioner Storley gets called. All right, we'll go with that. All right, we have cleared up our intergovernmental meeting conundrum. Other updates, concerns? All right, if not, we have a number of meetings to note. We have our HRA board tomorrow, and we'll have an opportunity to meet Justin Hale, and he is going to be just a very, very busy person. I know this week he's meeting lots of new people and getting acquainted with his workspace, and so Jason's going to Be a very, very busy young man. We're excited to have him on board. We have our housing work session coming up on May 4th. And then, as Commissioner Storley mentioned, we have our meeting in Duluth on June 2nd. We have the Arrowhead Regional Corrections meeting here on June 17th, right here in our commissioner's room. And the Board of Appeals and Equalization coming up later in June on June 23rd. Got a couple of correspondence or memos, the sales tax report and our medical examiner report from 2021. And recognition of staff. We have some new hires. We're very excited to welcome Rachael Schauer, PHHS social worker for adult services. Matthew Olson, our highway department engineer, technician 1. Michelle Lewis, the sheriff's office public safety telecommunicator and jailer, and Cody Scott in the sheriff's office as well with public safety telecommunicator and jailer. And with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Solison. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.